Yeah, I'm having a little bit of 125 Elijah Craig grenade.
I'd drink with you. This is like the second night in a row I haven't drank in like 10 days. So I need to take it easy. Hey everyone, we hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving and now you're back and ready to start mixing some bourbon with your eggnog leading up to Christmas. Our Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale is going to keep going on just a little bit longer to allow any of those stragglers who want to get their hands on a Bourbon Pursuit t-shirt, koozie, and stickers for $35 shipped to your door. If this sounds good to you or maybe any other special bourbon love in your life, send us an email at theduo, THEDUO, at bourbonpursuit.com or reach out on social media on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to make your purchase. We are completely sold out of the Devil XLs and only have a few remaining of our other sizes for both men and women. And once we're out of those sizes, we are completely out. I want to say thank you to everyone that has taken the time and filled out their Bourbon Pursuit audience survey. This is going to be a great help to us as we continue to grow the show by knowing our audience more. Or remember, we're also giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to one lucky winner. So please take the 3 minutes to fill it out at bourbonpursuit.com/survey. With that, enjoy this week's episode. Welcome back to an episode of the Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. And then I think I might start making a new tagline because we've used that one a lot. And, I think there's been a lot of movies with The Rock out lately with Dwayne Johnson. And if anybody remembers back in the days when he was the WWE, the People's Champ, I might start calling this the People's Podcast, because the People Podcast of bourbon, because people just love us. And I can't say thank you enough to all the great fans out there that do support and they love this show. So this is going to be a fun episode. So just Kenny here tonight, riding solo. Ryan can't make it. He's actually with the kids tonight. He said he couldn't get off for a few more hours because of wife texted him. He just couldn't make it. But this will be a good one because, I know the guest personally tonight. I've known him for about a little bit over a year now. Not only that, this is going to be an interesting show because at multiple times people have always asked, and they want to know about things like, who is the Bourbon Cartel? Who is the Bourbon Mafia? Who is 1789B? Like, who are all these groups and how did they get formed? And either, how can they be a part of it? How can they start their own group? And so this is going to be, you're going to be learning tonight from one of the people that was very beginning, kind of started it all. And so I'm very happy to welcome to the show, Eddie Noel. So Eddie is a member and the owner, I guess, and the leader of a group called the Bourbon Cartel, which is also a group that he graciously invited me into. So you got two members of the Bourbon Cartel on tonight. So Eddie, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me on, Kenny.
So before we get into talking about groups and everything like that, I kind of want to let people get an idea about just who you are. So, when did you get into bourbon and, really figure out like, oh, there's an idea here that we could start creating groups that are dedicated to this sort of stuff too?
Well, I think probably one of the my first experiences with bourbon was back when Maker's Mark, back in 1993, came out with the blue Maker's Mark wax bottle. They kind of started all the trend of the different colored wax top bottles. And I really didn't per se drink bourbon at that time, but I really thought it was a cool concept with the different wax, colored tops and stuff. They started doing stuff every year with different colored wax, doing charity type things with those. And slowly I started, trying bourbons and kind of developed a palate and a taste for different bourbons and stuff. So the longer and stuff that I, was into this, I think that my palate kind of developed a little bit for more of the, different bourbons and the finer bourbons and stuff as we're talking about today. So that's kind of basically how I got into everything.
I mean, I think we all kind of get hooked in at the very beginning to Makers because it's got that iconic red wax and you see it on the shelf and you're like, oh man, this looks great. And then all of a sudden you start learning about, like you said, like all those quote unquote limited edition bottles where they come out with a different colored wax or different theme and stuff like that. So how far back were you going, like collecting those, and do you still collect them today?
Well, actually, I started back, with the blue wax back in 1993, and probably up until a couple of years ago, I had amassed probably 200 or 300 bottles of different colored waxes, and slowly I've been kind of getting out of those because I never did crack them open, and my bar down in my basement was running out of room, so I had to kind of slowly start selling things off a little bit, little by little. Plus, I was the more I was into it, the more I was into the drinking part of bourbon instead of collecting. And so I started, kind of, selling that collection off a little bit, and then either that or trading it for other bottles that I could drink.
Yeah, you kind of sound like me because I was doing the Maker's Mark thing for a while, not '93 by any means, right? I think some of my first bottles were in the beginning of the 2000s, maybe like 2005, 2007. I remember getting a lot of the UK memorabilia ones, when they win championships and stuff like that. And then I think the past, it was probably like 2 or 3 years ago. And it might have been the Tim Couch. It was actually, I know it was after the Tim Couch bottle. I think my breaking point was the Dan Issel bottle when I realized now they're really stretching here and they're creating like 50,000 bottles of it. So it's not even like collectible anymore, right? It's just kind of like
Right.
it's just something that you just look at. I mean, I think when you look at like what they did with the American Pharoah bottle this past year, where you could still go and find it on shelves in stores like all around the state or even throughout the country, right? And I just remember when they were releasing it on the first day, everybody rushed out to go get it. People were trying to sell them the day after, and then now it's just a huge influx in the market. So I think
and believe it or not, a lot of guys that are just getting into bourbon now, they are kind of going back where we started years ago, and they're trying to amass these bourbon collections and stuff, which includes the makers bottles, with the different waxes and stuff. So they're kind of newbies to the field, and they're just getting started on, one of their passions. So
yeah, I'm more than happy to sell some of like the past few years of Keeneland bottles I got sitting down there that are signed. It was just like, I think there's only like 4 bottles that I care about. Other than that, like, honestly, the only one that I'm really holding on to is that Calipari bottle because he has it signed and he's getting the national championship. I'm just waiting until the day like he gets inducted into, a big Hall of Fame or something like that. And then maybe it'll be worth something one day, right? But
yeah, I've got the original blue wax one, which I first bought, and then the 100-year bottle that they sold for $1,000 a bottle. That was like with a blue and white wax, I think. And then later, I think it was dipped on with gold on top of it. It had 3 different waxes as a kind of a second edition. But those are probably 2 of my, bottles that I'll probably never get rid of.
yeah, I'm with you on that one. So let's kind of get back to topic here and let's kind of dive into
Okay.
it. So I think the one thing we have to explain first, we talk about these groups and they see some of these bottles that pop every once in a while, but explain just like what in essence, and it could just be the blanket dumbed down version, but what does a barrel picking group even do?
Well, basically, what I wanted to do was get a group of guys together because what I saw the trend going in the secondary market right now was the prices were going so high for all of these different bottles that were being put out by the distilleries. And, they would come out at, retail at the gift shops or, in the stores or whatever. And then all of a sudden, if it was a good bottle that, people determined it was a good bottle, it could sell for, 50, 60, $80 at retail. And then all of a sudden they walk out the door and they're in the parking lot posting it for $300, $400, $500. And I'm like, well, this is really, kind of going to pot on being able to afford good drinking bourbon. So my thought was to get a group together of guys and actually go to the distilleries, kind of pair yourself with some stores that had already had barrel picks and stuff at the certain distilleries, and go in there and pick some of the best bourbon that you'd ever want to bottle and drink, and you would get it at a fair price. And I think that's where the trend and stuff nowadays is going, is barrel picks are getting to be very good. Again, the picks are dependent on the pallets and the guys that are picking it out. So you've got to be very selective in your groups and stuff on, who you've got going on these barrel picks.
Absolutely. And not only that is, I mean, we've talked about on the show before that barrel selections are starting to be a good avenue for people to start, if they want to start getting a good collection of, I want to say hard to find bourbon, but it's good bourbon that's been specially collected. Or picked out. It's nothing that's just the run of the mill stuff that you're going to find on the shelf of your liquor store. So it's unique in that aspect that you get to try something a little bit different. I will say, being a part of this group and, having you set all this up, the fact that you get to go and pick it even like has a more special or deeper meaning to it. And I think that's something that, if you get to do it, you're like, oh shit, I want 12 of these bottles. Right. So I think it has more of that connection to it. So, before we get into some more of this, talk about some of your history with barrel picking groups, because you've been in a few before this and you've helped form them. And I kind of want to set the premise of the show to say, like, if you want to go out there and you want to form your own group, like, how do we create a blueprint for this, or how do we figure all this out? So kind of talk about your history with doing this as well.
Well, basically this started back in August of 2013. I was one of 12 guys that started another organization, bourbon organization. I wouldn't per se call it a barrel picking group. I think it was more of an organization that wanted to get into barrel picking. It was called the Bourbon Mafia. And it was a great group of guys and stuff. We started out and everything. I want to go out and, kind of get my own group of guys together and handpicked by me. To where, I actually run the group and I can get the barrel picks and stuff for the group and stuff. And it's real hard sometimes to get a group of guys and stuff together that all get along or that all have the same taste and the palates and stuff. So that's where you kind of got to really trust, I think, the guys in your group. It's been a long labor of love and stuff for me trying to do this and, get barrels and do stuff that's actually going to really taste good and that everybody in the group likes. Knock on wood, this group of mine now, which is a barrel picking buying group, the Bourbon Cartel, we've got 30 great guys in the group. They're from 12, 13 states, and we basically talk on a daily basis. It's been a great ride so far, and I'm hoping it's going to extend out for years to come.
Well, good. So you've been into it for, 5 years plus now of just, doing this sort of stuff. So you've got a lot of different barrels probably underneath your belt of stuff that you've picked in, right?
Well, we've this year and stuff, the cartel and stuff has been together. It was a year. I think I started it in April of 2016. Been together a little over a year and a half now. This last year, we've been very fortunate. We're going to end up with probably right at 8 to 9 barrels. Pretty much unprecedented for a group and stuff of 30 guys. There's several other groups out there, 1789B and Fifth Column and BIB group. And, those guys have got probably several more members than we've got in our group and stuff. But I think we've done very well for almost our first year in business here.
Okay, cool. So let's think, not that I'm going to do it, but let's say like Kenny's going to break off and we're going to make the Bourbon Pursuit barrel picking group, right? Kind of give me an idea of like, what's the mentality I have to know going into this? Like is it hard? Like how difficult is it to try to, let's say it's like Ocean's 11. Like I got to find the engineer. I got to find the acrobat. I got to find all these different people. So kind of like talk about the mentality of what it is of actually going into this and the type of components that you need to make it successful.
Well, first of all, it always helps to have really good members in your group that's got a lot of contacts or that knows stores or that has a good reputation with stores that already have barrel picks and stuff with certain distilleries. You're talking Four Roses, Buffalo Trace, Wild Turkey, just to name of the top of the few. I go to pick members in the group and stuff. I know a lot of people by name and a lot of people I've known through the years and always ask them, I say, in order for you to come into the group and stuff, what do you feel like you can bring to the group? Then I kind of get references on the person. They got a good palate, how long they've been in the bourbon industry. And then, we set up through the store, we go and set up a barrel pick with the distillery. and generally it can be anywhere from 3 barrels to 10 barrels. Obviously, the more barrels that you can taste to get a better selection from, the better, because you may have 3 barrels that they pulled out there for you to taste, and not one of the barrels may not be good. So I always tell the guys when we go into these barrel picks, and I always try to attend all of them myself. Be prepared to walk away, because if there's nothing there, or if they're not willing to go get any more barrels, then we're not going to just buy a barrel just to say we bought a barrel. We're only going to buy the best that we can do.
Right. So, I mean, in regards to that, you talked about some of the people that you want to have connected to the stores. I mean, does it help to actually have liquor store owners like in the group as well to kind of alleviate a lot of that? Well, I got to go talk to my liquor store. Like, I don't know, like, we'll see we'll see what he says. So what's the kind of a good ratio of the kind of people you want to find?
Well, I think, it's always good. I mean, you just said it. I mean, it's always good to have members in your group that, own a store, or that are friends, with a store owner. Just happens that the Bourbon Cartel, we've got 2 store owners in our group. I do a lot of phone call work and email work myself. And then when I get the connection, I always try to see if there's a store owner that, can get us into the distillery, go ahead and do the barrel picks there.
So I guess another question that brings this up, because, do you find it difficult? Like, why would a store, what does a store benefit out of actually having the group go do it and then taking the barrel, versus they can just go and just keep it for themselves to sell at their own store? So, like, kind of explain the trade-off there.
Well, the trade-off is that, especially if again, either myself, who I've got a lot of contacts, or members of the group have good store contacts, they pretty much would trust that person to bring in people to actually have good palates and to do their store picks for them. The benefit for the store is that they get good bourbon. I mean, really good bourbon. They've got 4, 5, 6 good palates there that are going to agree on one barrel that they're going to put in their store, that more than likely they're going to probably sell out of within 2 or 3 weeks. It's been before to where we do when we do go in with a store to do something, that we do a half and half. We do a half bottles for my group and half bottles for the store, which they more times than not, they want to put their logo on their bottles. And of course, my group, we want to have our logo on our bottles too, as a Bourbon Cartel pick. And they may also too want to go in jointly and have say, this is XYZ store selection with the Bourbon Cartel. So, there's several different ways and stuff that can be done.
I mean, I kind of see that as a good benefit to a lot of liquor store owners, because a few things, right? So you have the ability to kind of look at a group of individuals that are established, that have the connections, that can get a few people there and can actually go and choose a good barrel. Because it actually happens, like there's actually a liquor store here in Louisville where they have a bourbon round table, or I forget what they call it, bourbon something. It's by Mike Veach, and then the Bourbon Babe, and another name slipping my top of my head here, but they do all the barrel picks for the entire store. And right. So it's in their benefit to have these people with these titles to actually go and do this. And that actually helps sell more of those bottles in their stores and stuff like that. Right. So I could definitely,
well, and actually too, if your group has really come up with a name for themselves, let's take 1789B and stuff. You've got a couple of guys out of that group and stuff, and if they put their name on a bottle, hands down, that thing is going to sell out in no time. So, that's the benefit for the stores. And, I don't know that they do store picks or whatever. I don't know a whole lot about that group. That's just kind of an example.
So I guess this also kind of falls into the next question about, the type of members that you want in your group. You already mentioned that this group that I'm in as well, the cartel has members in 13 or 14 different states. So it's not necessarily that they all need to be within the same area. So is there any, I guess you'd say, positive or negative by having people spread out and diverse that aren't in a central location or something like that?
Well, I think the main thing is, I mean, yes, it does help because, hey, let's face it, Kentucky is, bourbon capital of, the country. I've got 30 guys in the group from, I think there's 13 up to 13 states now. The benefit of that is that if those guys in other states have stores that want us to come and do picks from, they may have multiple contacts for other distilleries. And I don't know if you want to get into craft distilleries or not, but a lot of that is where things are going now. You take your Wild Turkey, your Buffalo Trace, your Four Roses, and all that. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but some of these craft distilleries are putting out some daggone good bourbon right now.
Mm-hmm. So you get an opportunity to actually, get outside of the Kentucky realm. But I guess it also does help to have members that are in Kentucky, especially for stores that are based in, I don't know, Wyoming, Colorado, west of the Mississippi, that they're not necessarily going to be flying here to choose the barrel, or they are limited to the samples just being shipped to the store, and then they have to
Right.
just.
And what that would do would be, if they trust they trust our member enough, then they can actually set the barrel tasting up for our group here in Kentucky, let's say at Wild Turkey, to go and actually pick the barrel, and then they don't actually have to come in. I mean, some of them choose to, some of them don't. Then, they've got a great group of palates and stuff that's going and choosing their bourbon for them.
Right. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome though, right? I mean, I think it gives an opportunity for a lot of those store owners that don't, that they have to, they buy a barrel and it, may just sit in, their store for a while until they can move it. Not only that is, we can be transparent here. I've had plenty of store picks, and there's some that are great and there's some that are like, they're pretty meh, right? And you can't always trust what a store owner is going to choose, because they're not 100% bourbon all the time, right? They have to
be. And let's face it, some of the store owners may not even like bourbon. I mean, they're in business to make money, so they need to find the best people or the best person to go and pick their product for their customers.
No, I totally agree, right? Because they got to push the wine, they got to push vodka, they got to push scotch, they got to push rum. So yeah, they don't necessarily get an opportunity to just be all in on bourbon like we are all the time. And I mean, let's be honest. Like, I think most of us that ourselves, as well as people that also listen to the show, I mean, we're drinking bourbon 2, 3, 4, 5 nights a week, right? So we definitely. I don't know if that means we have a problem, but it doesn't hurt, right? As Eddie takes a drink. Let's move on a little bit here. So, in regards of the store in itself, I've talked to a few different store owners, different parts of the country, and some of them will say like, "No, we're just too small. Like, we'll never get like a barrel of 107. Like, we can only get Knob Creek picks, and that's it." Which isn't a bad thing by any means, but there is different levels of like volume that a store can do versus another can do, and they get more picks versus another one. So is there a certain level of volume that a store owner should know, like before, like saying, like contacting a barrel picking group and saying, "Hey guys, can you go do this? And I want to throw your sticker on this barrel and put it in my store."
With the way that the industry is running and going right now, a lot of the distilleries are really severely cutting back on their production, or not production, but on their private barrel picks and stuff. It's getting harder and harder to get in to do these. And like, again, I said, we've been very lucky for this year that we've had the number of barrel picks and stuff, that the groups had actually turned down probably, a couple of Four Roses, Elijah Craig and stuff like that, because, that's what a lot of the people are doing right now. And I just want to do something a little bit different, and I want to get some other taste and some other juice out there that that's possibly good. I mean, granted, we've got stores and stuff that we can go and do Four Roses, Wild Turkey, and all that stuff with. Reality of it is that the barrel picks, a lot of the distilleries have shut down their programs right now, and it's very difficult to even get in there. You have to have a history with that distillery to be able to even get back in the program. One good example is Smooth Ambler, Old Scout, West Virginia. They shut down their barrel program and stuff, and the group was very fortunate enough when they started their Old Scout American Whiskey barrel program back because we had One West DuPont Wines in D.C., who's very good friends with them, the Johns down there. We were very fortunate for the group to be able to get in on the first couple of barrels when they started their program back. And that's just a prime example of having good contacts within your group and so being able to get stuff.
So I guess that kind of rolls into another question. I know it is definitely getting harder. When we go and do barrel picks, you even see less and less barrels that get rolled out for you to actually choose from as well, right? I mean, there's just, I don't want to say they're being stingy, but they're definitely changing that. We actually had an episode a few ago with Bo Beckman, who is the barrel select manager at Buffalo Trace. And he kind of talked about, their reasoning behind it of only doing 4 barrels while Wild Turkey does 12 barrels and so on and so forth. And then some places you can go and they're like, here's a DeWalt drill, like knock yourself out, right? It's definitely trying to figure out like who is allowing you to do that. But in addition, you said that you've turned down Four Roses, turned down Elijah Craig. Is there ever a time where you're just like, all right, like this is an abundance? Like, how do we slow this down? Because we can't do this many barrel picks. Either we can't have guys traveling all the time or too much money. So like, what do you kind of consider like a good amount of barrel picks per quarter or something like that?
I would like to eventually see a group or, anybody that does a group. I think if they get 3 to 4 barrel picks in a year, I think they're doing very well. Russell's is going to end up putting out going to start their rye barrel program next year, hoping to get in on a rye. We have not done a rye yet. I would love to do something like that. I'm just trying to do some different stuff.
Yeah, I guess kind of talk about that. Like, what are some of the craft ones that you've been doing lately that like nobody else has really had an opportunity to do?
We actually had this last March, we were able to get into Joseph Magnus up in Washington, D.C., which is a very small craft distillery. Of course, all their juice right now is source juice, and they make no bones about it. It comes from MGP in Indiana. They've harbored and produced some of the best juice and rye, bourbon and rye out there. Did a 10-year pickup there. Even though it's just straight bourbon, there's no finishes, no nothing on it. It was probably one of the best 10-year bourbons I think I've ever tasted. We're also working with Boone County Distillery, which we did a barrel pick up here close to my home here recently. We did a 12-year MGP. It is phenomenal. It's bottled at barrel strength, which is going to be a 114 proof, along with having full mouth complexity flavor. Man, it's just got that bite right on the end that, a lot of people look for. There's several ones that I'm looking at right now. I don't want to kind of mention some of them because I've got some set up for next year and stuff. I'm working with the owners and the head distillers and stuff right now, getting samples sent in to me. So, but anyway, that's a couple right off the top of my head.
It sounds like you might have a love affair with MGP over there then.
Well, actually, you can't go wrong. I mean, you take Smooth Ambler, Old Scout, and stuff. That's where their juice comes from. So that's one of the.
Yeah, I know. And you've had an opportunity to do Smooth Ambler, had the opportunity to do Boone County, Joseph Magnus. So like when you go to all these and you're tasting MGP from a lot of different ones, right? How do you notice a lot of like similarities or a lot of differences based on all these different brands when it's all sourced from the same place?
You know what? You would think that it would be similar, but it's really not. Barrels, according to where they're placed in the rick houses, and they all age differently. They all have different, complexities and different taste that comes out of the woods and everything. And that's what's so great about doing barrel picks, because you can have 2 barrels sitting side by side in a rick house, and I'll almost guarantee you that those 2 barrels are going to taste different. And that's the great phenomenal about going and, doing these picks and stuff, because, you never know what you're going to come across. I mean, some of them may just taste like crap, and the other ones are just, the golden child.
Right. No, I mean, at the same time, right, it's like if you're sourcing 10-year MGP or 12-year MGP, right, you buy it when it's 8 or 7, 8, 9 years old, then it's trucked over, and then it spends a few years in the wood in either West Virginia or in DC or in wherever, right? So it definitely has a little bit of those characteristics that'll change it over time. So another question coming from, let's say as a member, right? So if anybody was out there starting their own group and they're thinking of costs, what does this cost go into it? Do you think, could members, what should they expect going into this? Is it something cheap to say like, oh, I'll just take a bottle this time, not next time? Like what should people understand if they want to do this? How committed you really have to be?
When I first contact a potential member, one of my first statements that comes out of my mouth is that not a cheap thing to do.
So say, I need to see your W-2 real quick. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm upfront with them, right up front, because it's, I told them, I said, I expect, activity. I want participation. And the second thing is you've got to trust people that are in that group, because not everybody can go on a barrel pick. They only allow sometimes 3 to 4 to maybe up to 8 people to go on this. Those people are picking for the whole group. So the whole group has to trust those pallets of those guys to bring the best stuff back, because a lot of times you won't get samples brought back that you can spread out to 30 people or 40 people and stuff. So, but I'm very upfront that it's not a cheap thing to be in and stuff. I mean, we've us 30 guys and stuff here in last year and stuff, we've put out a good amount of money.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but it is fun though, right? I mean, I think that is it. You have to understand that,
and you just said it right there. The whole thing about it is fun. I mean, you've got to have fun being in this. You can't look at it as, oh my God, this is costing this, and this. If you think about the cost, you don't need to be in this industry, because, I mean, they're even though we're getting cheaper stuff, we're getting better stuff, and you're going to want multiple bottles of it. Our bottle prices have ranged anywhere from $40 up to over $100 and something. So I'm not going to say the top price and stuff, because I'm not going to give stuff like that away, but it's not cheap. And guys in the group, they buy 1 or 2 bottles, and most guys buy the cases.
Right. So there's definitely going to be some people
and they go through it very fast.
Because you're like, all right, Eddie, come on, time, clock's ticking. Like, we need another barrel pick. Like, I'm almost out of four of these bottles, right? Yep. So
absolutely, myself included.
So I guess, if you didn't know a store owner, is there any other way that you can get barrels, or do you think like that is your key to the city right here? Like, there's no other way it's going to happen without having some sort of store connection?
Well, you can go right to the distilleries, and they will. I mean, like I went to the Boone County one up here, and we actually worked out a deal to where I can buy, I can do directly through the gift shop. But mainly it's going through a store. I mean, it's all legal because they've got a liquor license. Though, I mean, that's the main thing, is you got to have a liquor license. We don't do anything illegally. Anything that's purchased and stuff through us is always run through.
Well, we're not going to say it on air, right? We just won't say it on air. No, I'm just kidding with you.
that has a liquor license, because there's people out there that's actually watching this and taking notes and stuff on all this.
So, another thing to kind of set, are there ever like any ground rules of a group? So if somebody's starting this up and saying, the guy's reading Emerald on from 1789B, and they said their only rules are no religion, no politics. That's a pretty good ground rule. But like, what do you think are some good ground rules to kind of understand that when people start joining this group, like what they should expect, or any group when they start?
I think my main ground rules is, you always keep in mind, if you're part of the group, you're representing the group and 29 other guys. Again, we're out to have fun. We're all adults here, and we do barrel picks in different cities and stuff, and we have fun in those cities. I just think that a lot of members that are joining groups, they need to take a look at the overall group, who's in the group, and what the group is about. If the group is about, my group, we do charity work. We're holding back so many bottles from our barrel picks to sell for auction for charities, to give back to the community. That's a big thing that all of us in our group we agree on.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I kind of forgot to bring that up about having philanthropy be a staple or a key staple of this group. But do you think like that's a pretty good something that most people could always just take, right? But it's always better to just give a little bit back.
Well, and it is, and I think we've already done a couple of different charities, and I think members in the group have a real closeness with a certain charity, and we'll always take a look at that. Everybody's got things going on with family, friends, and different things. We recently helped out Houston down in Texas. We've got a couple members down there. The group got together and got a bunch of money together, and we sent it down to one of our members down there and told them to use it the best that they knew how to help out in places that wasn't going to get any help. And that to me, says a lot about groups and people that are wanting to help people that have had devastation. And that's true to my heart, because a lot of these places, they don't get government help for months. And just to be able to go buy water, to buy food, to buy diapers, stuff like that. I mean, I think that hits home.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, I think that I read so much stuff about, people in Houston, like it's in a 500-year flood zone, right? And nobody had flood insurance, right? So it was there. A lot of people could use it. Who knows? Maybe you took that money and gave it to a liquor store and we're like, all right, next barrel's on us, right? So this was actually a question from one of our Patreon members, Amy Halter. She said, if there's ever any differences in opinion about which barrel to select, because you're going to have, as you said, anywhere between 3 and 8 people. So how does a large group actually handle selecting that barrel?
We ask the distillery or wherever we're going to pick a barrel how many people we can bring. It can be anywhere, like I said before, it can be anywhere from 3 to 8 people. And the members of the group going back have to trust each other. So we try to come to a consensus when we're barrel tasting. If we can't on that tasting, then, we'll do a blind tasting, after that, and say we have 6 samples here and there's 3 of them that we really like. It's, let's say 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Then we take the person that's, we're doing the tasting with, we'll say, okay, we want to taste these blindly. Well, they may take us to the rick house. They may already have the barrels picked or set out there, and we'll go there and taste those barrels blindly. Or we can leave the room for a little bit. They can reset our glasses up, taste that way too. We just got back from Nashville doing a Bell Mead Madeira cast strength barrel pick this last weekend, and this actually happened down there. There was 8 of us. Like what I said before, we put 2 of them back, and there was 5 samples. We put 2 of them back, so there was 3 left. We couldn't really decide between the 3, so we all just took a vote. We all retasted all of them, and then we took a vote. So the top ones that got the most votes is the one we went with. So, and that's kind of the democratic way of doing things.
Yeah, I guess the good thing about doing a barrel pick too is that if you have to go back and taste it, well, there's no shortage of it, right? Like we don't have to worry about ruining or losing any of it. So,
right. And I actually got to bring sample back, which I'm gonna kind of farm out, some 2-ounce samples. I think I got 200 milliliters because they've never had this, pick bourbon before with the finish. I had neither. I went into it very skeptical, and literally it just blew me away. It's a cast strength at 111 proof. I think they put it out on the shelves at 90 something when they put it out in the stores. So nobody's ever done a barrel of this before. So this was very new at cast strength for everybody. It just kind of blew me away. So the 8 of us down there that actually did this, I think we were just all in awe about, the taste on this.
Another good question, a lot of people, they don't get an opportunity to go taste, to go do barrel picks, right? So they had to vicariously live through, somebody like you or me or a store owner or whoever it is. And one thing they always want to ask is, like, how do you do your barrel picks? Like, what are you going through? Like, if something's gonna be bottled at 100 and it's at 120 proof when you pull it out, are you like, well, shit, I'd rather have barrel proof anyway, so I'm gonna taste it like this? Or you're just saying like, all right, let's be logical about this. Let's water it down. Like, what's your thought when you're going through and doing these, sampling out?
Well, you want to taste it pretty much. Good example of this was our Russell's 10-year pick. I think we tasted the barrels at, I'm thinking about 112, 113 proof, and they will only bottle at 107. We always add a little bit of water, a couple drops of water to the bourbon, see what it's going to taste like, watered down a little bit. I think we got a bunch of proof whores in my bourbon group because everybody's loving the higher strength barrel proof stuff nowadays. And, you're getting your Elmer T. Lee's at 90 something proof and all of these other bourbons, and it's like drinking water anymore. It's always good when you're on a barrel pick to try to drink and taste the barrel at what they're going to put it out at. I mean, you're not going to get it exact. If you can get it close to it and just see if the flavor and the taste and stuff is still there, I think that's important.
Well, good. That was actually a question from another Patreon listener called Catch 22, and to kind of add on to that, there's a huge craze with NCF and non-charcoal filtering or non-chill filtering. So, kind of talk about like, do you think like that has any effect of what's going on, or because sometimes it is chill filtered, sometimes it's not. You go to Buffalo Trace, you have to request it to not be chill filtered, and the whole craze is right now is like people want NCF kind of bourbons. Like, kind of what's your take on that?
I think the non-chill filtered, I think you're getting more true to the bourbon taste out of the barrel, and I think that's more where people are gravitating toward. Because I have a lot of guys that'll be on the picks. They'll say, this is non-chill filtered, right? They'll come right out and say that right in the beginning.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. And then Catch 22 has another question. He said, do you get a feel for like how many bottles are going to be in this barrel yield before you do the pick, or do you even care at all? Like, if you can roll it and you can feel there's just a few gallons in, or do you roll it and feel whatever?
The distillery can actually weigh the barrel, and they can, because they've been doing it for so long, they can pretty much tell you. Obviously, the older the barrel is, there's going to be a difference in 10-year bottle output from 10-year bourbon than 12-year or 14-year. Just because the angels share, taking that. But they can weigh the barrels and pretty much give you a good, guesstimation and how many bottles or cases are going to come out.
But you don't care, like even if you do sample it and maybe one yields 100 bottles, maybe one yields 150. Like, does it matter to you at all?
Nope, it does not matter. The proof's in the barrel, and the taste and stuff is in the bourbon. We take what we get. We have done a guesstimation before of 150 or 200 bottles, and they've come in at 50 bottles less or 60 bottles less. So we have members that, include myself. I gave up, I think, like 18 bottles on this Old Scout American whiskey one because it came in short. We were guessing on that one was going to be over 200 bottles. It came in at 162. You got to go back to your members and say, hey, we're taking people that can give up a few bottles here and there, and generally guys in the group and stuff, they step up, and again, that's what the brotherhood's about. Everybody gets some bourbon, everybody gives up a little bourbon.
Right, absolutely. Chris has another question. So Chris J is another Patreon supporter, and he says, do you see an advantage to tasting at the distillery versus having them just ship you samples?
My answer to that is yes. Number one, it's like anything when you go to a winery or a wine cellar or whatever. It's an ambiance, and I think it's an experience when you go there. I preferably like to go to the rick houses and actually drill barrels. I'd really like for them to pull 8 to 10 barrels to sample when we're going to a distillery. I always usually request that. We'll see if, the request gets honored. It's such an experience to go and do that and take the drill and go into the barrel and, put a little air hole at the top and have that bourbon come out into your glass and everybody filling their glass up. You're really tasting right there truly what the bourbon tastes like. And to describe the taste, it's just, you can't hardly describe it. It's just unreal how it tastes.
I agree, because it's also just the ambiance, the setting, being in the rick house, the smells are all there. Like, it just seems like all these worlds are colliding all just perfectly, right? So that's what it feels like.
You've got all your senses and stuff. You're hearing the wood crack, you're hearing the drill go into the barrel, you're smelling the bourbon, you're seeing it. It kind of really advances a lot of your extra sensory stuff with your eyes and your smell and all of that. And I think that's a big part of it. And that's if anybody gets into a barrel buying or picking group, I mean, that's one thing that I would suggest is, always request to go into the rick house. Now, some of them won't. They've got up tasting rooms and stuff like that, and they won't do that. A lot of these distilleries have become, per se corporate. And the corporations, they don't want people in the rick houses, and, it's too dangerous and stuff. But there's still some good old boys out there that'll take you into the rick house, as you well know.
And then there's kind of two follow-on questions to that one. The first one is when you're, you can go and pick a barrel any time of the year, right? You can go of the high heat of summer, you can go in the dead cold of winter. And for me personally, I think when we actually picked out the Russell's Reserve barrel together, it was a little chilly that day. And I don't know, like, you've done a lot more barrel picks than I have. Do you ever feel like there might be some sort of other factor that's playing into it, where like the bourbon's colder, so it has maybe a different characteristic that it's easier to taste that day versus on a super hot day or anything like that?
Well, I think, if you're going into the rick house, I mean, obviously when me and you went in to do that Russell's Reserve pick, and, we tasted samples in the tasting room, then we went up to the rick house, and I think the bourbon had a little bit different taste to it because it was cold. I mean, I like drinking I do not use any water or any type of ice with my bourbon. I'd always drink my bourbon neat. And I think you're getting the full flavor of the bourbon that way. If it's a little bit colder, I mean, I always kind of cut my hand around the glass when I'm in the rick house. If it's cold out, I want to warm that bourbon up a little bit. I think it does change the taste of it a little bit for me. I mean, again, it's all personal preference.
Yeah, just a kind of a funny story for everyone. I remember when we did this Russell's Reserve pick, we go into this tasting room, and I think there was way more than 8 people there that day. I think we had like 12. But Eddie brought us out, like, I don't know, somewhere on like 30 fucking samples. It felt like it was a ton. And so we're all sitting around tasting, and we narrowed it down to, I believe it was like 3 or 4. And this is also, it's winter time, right? We had to have it in the tasting room because they were like, it's too cold. Like, you don't want to be in the rick house. And we're like, all right, whatever, we'll do this. And so we did that. And then there was like 3 left, but with 12 people there and like 400 ml bottles or whatever it was, it didn't go very far. We were like, well, I guess we got to go to the rick house, right? So yeah, everybody got the opportunity to go to the rick house and drink out of there straight. So it was fun, but I think I remember at that point going like, I don't think we can pick a bad barrel at this point. Catch-22 has one more question to ask in regards to that. You kind of talked about what some distilleries do versus what some don't do. Some have tasting rooms, some allow you to go to the rick house. So in your opinion, go ahead and feel free to name names or shame anybody, but like, who does the best job at providing picks distillery-wise that you've done?
I have to say Wild Turkey does a phenomenal job. Eddie Russell, we had a member in our group that was childhood friends with Eddie, grew up with him in school and played football with him. And Eddie just provided a great experience down at Wild Turkey for the guys in the group and stuff. We had a lot of our members and stuff that showed up that day down there. And I mean, even Eddie, he had more than one with us. And I think he kind of was feeling things right after we ended up going up to the rick house also. There's different experiences with different distilleries out there, and that's the whole fun thing about it is you go to, if it was all the same, it wouldn't be fun. I mean, you go to different distilleries and they do different things, and and I think that's what's the great thing about it is you go and experience all these different things at the different ones, and you're picking out a great bourbon. It's different people there. I've met anywhere from head distillers to just people that they have in charge of the tasting to owners. And, and it's pretty much across the board, if you've got an owner that's helping you with this, example is Boone County up here. The owner spent all day with me, and extremely nice gentlemen. They're getting their distillery kind of, up and going. They first started putting out 10-year bourbon, and now they're putting out a 12-year bourbon. That's just barrel select for that, and and I've tasted some of their rye that they've done. It's only been in the barrel for 18 months, but we drilled it, and man, is it good. It's, give it some years in that barrel and it's going to be phenomenal. And I think you pick up different experiences at different distilleries.
Absolutely. And so it also kind of leads into another question. Like Catch 22 had a question. I'm going to kind of like rephrase it a little bit. And
Okay.
so when you're doing these experiences, what have you found like some that do better than others? You kind of talked about Boone County had all day there. When we did Russell's, I think we had like 4 hours. When I did a Buffalo Trace pick, I think we only had like 30 minutes. That was the window, maybe 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it was. It was a much shorter window to pick out a barrel. So what do you kind of see is like, how long do you really have to choose a barrel at some of these places you go through? Like, how much time do you think you can spend nosing it versus actually tasting it versus going and retasting it? And then saying like, I don't want any of these, give me a new barrel, right?
Well, to me, if you're spending thousands of dollars to buy a barrel, you better well have enough time there and not be rushed to be able to pick that barrel. Because if you're rushed and stuff, I mean, that would probably turn me off right there. Because you want to take your time and really pick out, one of the best barrels that they have that presented you to taste. And again, if they don't have any barrels there that myself or any of the guys that go with me on the barrel picks that we really like, we say, hey, is there other barrels and stuff that we can taste? And if they say no, then, hey, we turn around and walk. And, we're not going to spend thousands of dollars on buying something that, that we don't like or that we're going to put our name on. Our name doesn't go on anything that doesn't meet, my approval or approval of the guys in the group. That's the good thing about it is, we've all got good palates and we feel like we're picking the best of the best out there. And it's a different experience with, each place you go to.
And so Catch 22 had another good question is like, when you're getting ready to go do a barrel pick, do you use like a control bourbon? Like before you go in, are you in the trunk of your car, like saying like, all right, we're going to drink some Elmer tea or we're going to drink something and we're going to have that be your control bourbon. So we're just not going into this with a fresh palate or something like that.
No, the answer to that is no. You're doing yourself a disservice and stuff and doing that. You're tainting your palate. On this last pick down in Nashville for the Belle Meade pick, one of the guys actually requested some dark chocolate from the gift shop to, cleanse his palate out and stuff after each taste from each sample of the bourbon. I just think that if you're tainting your palate with another bourbon or another distiller's product, then you're not doing your group or whoever's going to be buying those bottles a good service on tasting what actually what you're going to be getting.
That's a good answer. Actually, it's a fantastic answer. And so we'll kind of wrap this up because you have talked about a lot of the big guys, Wild Turkey, Four Roses, Buffalo Trace, but you're looking for a lot of other things that are out there. And I think for anybody that's really getting started, like that's a really good avenue to not say like let's just go after the big dogs, because let's think a little, like you said, we're thinking a little bit differently. Like what's something unique, something maybe nobody else has done. And so when you're thinking about those other distilleries, are those guys, I wouldn't say guys, but are those distilleries a lot easier to get on maybe their short list or their select list of barrel picks rather than trying to, I guess go all out on your first one and saying like, we got to go do Four Roses or we got to get a Weller 107, whatever it is?
Well, let's just say that when people start a distillery, guys, or, even I see even couples starting distilleries, they want their product out there. They want good reviews on their product. And yes, the answer to the question is yes, they are easier to get into because they want exposure for their product out there. And whether or not that they're actually producing or they're buying their bourbon, the source bourbon to get started with, which a lot of distilleries have to do in the meantime, because they want their own distillate sitting in the barrels for a few years, but they want the exposure, and they're very, I think they're easier to get into. I've already got contacts with probably 2 or 3 for next year that are craft distilleries, and they put out a fantastic product. I mean, I've had some samples. I'm getting some samples sent in. Again, I'm not going to say who it is. They're all over the country. And they're more than willing to work with you on things. So.
Right. Well, real cool. Well, Eddie, I want to say thank you again for coming on the show tonight. I also want to let you kind of give a plug for the group, because I know it's happened a few times already, like new membership spots open. And so how people can follow the group, how they can ask to be a part of the group. Catch 22 wants to know, is there an age limit for what you consider for picking, or is it just if you're over 21 and you got a good palate, you're in, right? So.
Well, basically what I tell people, and we've got numerous people, and I mean, we have spots that come open every now and then. I'm keeping the group limit right now to 30 people. You know, people can always send messages through our public page on Facebook. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and they can always message me on there, and I can get that. You know, we've had a couple membership spots open, and we were just swamped with, you know, people that wanted to get in the group. And I mean, it's a good concept. And, you know, I think people recognize that. You know, we may have 10 or 15, 20 people that are trying to get into one spot. And it's hard a lot of times to, you know, pick the one person and stuff. So, you know, to be able to, you know, become a member of the group. But no, there's no age limit. I mean, obviously, you know, you got to be 21, but, you know, I'm getting up there in the years. I'm probably one of the older ones in the group, you know, starting the group. But and the main thing is we're going to have fun, and we're going to have fun doing what we like to do.
And drinking a lot of bourbon in the process, right?
And drinking a lot of bourbon.
Yeah, actually, I realized I took Catch 22s and kind of spun in the wrong direction, because I think you said, do you have an age limit for what you consider picking? Like if you know, whether it's a good 6-year or a good 10-year, like does it matter the age? Yeah, so. I figured no.
I mean,
right? If it's good, it's good.
I mean, we've been out there and we've tasted barrels that are young. It depends on the taste of it, and you know, let your palate do the talking for you. Tasted 20-something-year-old, 30-something-year-old bourbon that tastes like crap, and you know, you think the longer and the older that is, the better it tastes. That's not necessarily true. So, and I mean, Kenny, you've been in this long enough to know that. You know, you can taste a younger bourbon and still be fantastic tasting, and you can taste a 24, 26-year bourbon, and you know, it's all woody, and it just has no taste to it at all.
Yep. I mean, just like when we did the Castle and Key pick, right? So we got to go and put down basically some new make, got to put in our own barrel, write our names on it, and we'll kind of just monitor it over the next almost maybe a decade, maybe a half decade. Who knows, right? So
yeah, I mean, who knows how long we can let it sit in there? I mean, we're just going to keep tasting it, and you know, we'll know when it's right, I think, to bottle.
Right. Well, cool. So, Eddie, I want to say thank you again for being on the show tonight. It was a pleasure, especially for all those people that want to understand like what barrel picking groups do. What does it really take to start one? What are the kind of key components that it does? And I think you answered a lot of those questions for people too. So awesome job.
I appreciate you having me on, Kenny.
You got it. So if you like what you hear, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Bourbon Pursuit. Also, make sure you follow the Bourbon Cartel on all those great social media channels. If you want to help support this podcast, make sure you check out Patreon, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. I want to say thank you to, we had, I think, up to 4 or 5 different Patreon viewers that were on here asking questions. So being a Patreon member got you in here to actually be a part of the podcast and ask questions in real time. So I want to say thank you to those people that were able to do that. If you have any more show suggestions, fan mail, things you want to talk to us about, send us an email. It's the duo, THEDUO @bourbonpursuit.com. And with that, we'll see you all next week.